what's the relationship between sensation and personal intuition?
Personal intuition. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think intuition, a lot of people would say, is a type of feeling. It is just like a sensor, something you sense. You just have this sort of like it feels like this is what I should be doing, and you almost sort of could be watching yourself approach, one course of action rather than another. And at the same time, intuition, it has to be about something, right? You have to have a kind of conceptual framework around like what the problem space is and what's possible, and a sense of even like what's afforded you, what your choices are. And then what intuition, I guess, is doing is like letting you know this feels like the right way to go, right? This feels like a more attractive option than others, and part of it almost by definition is like, and you don't really know why. Like if you had a good set of reasons, you wouldn't be like, this is my intuition. You'd be like, here's my argument, or here's my logic. So being open to that kind of body-born approach signal, I think is really important if you want to have that kind of intuitive response. And people differ on how much they value logical reasoning versus this kind of in the moment intuition. And I guess what I would say is, in situations where the signal you're looking for, like the value actually is an emotional value, like, so it happens often in like understanding, like if we feel good in relationships or we feel good in a certain work situation, then reasons don't really matter, right? Like this is a place where intuition really, really probably is going to lead you in a better direction than a set of reasons, because you can make reasons for or against staying in a relationship or staying in a job or things like that. And at the end of the day, it's what you care about is like, well, am I happy? Right. And so your intuition is going to help you move away from things that are making you unhappy and more towards the things that make you happy, if that's the kind of problem you have in your head. But there's some good research suggesting that people who really focus on body sensation are more often moved by, reactions in their body. But in some situations that doesn't make them more skillful. So if you're at a casino, the casino is designed to provoke intuitive approach responses to essentially bad decisions, right? Like that, they say like the house always wins. And so you're like, oh, it's so, if I just do it one more time, I'm going to strike the jackpot. I was so close last time. I just need to bet a bit more money, like these kind of things. That's still an intuitive response. You're like, ooh, I like this. And maybe at a higher level, you start getting a bit of a dread or something that pulls you away, but everything is structured to kind of co-opt your intuition. We see that people who are more in tune with that feeling in their body, you can predict when they're going to take risks in a gambling situation more based on their body response than someone who doesn't describe themselves as intuitive, but they don't do better on those gambling tests. It just explains when they're going to take a risk. So times when we're like just doing math, like, card counting is better than intuition for blackjack or something like that. Like times when there really is expert knowledge and there are correct, like real right, objectively right or wrong answers, where different people could follow that same process and say, no, this is, the right thing, this is the wrong thing. You probably don't want to just lead intuition there, but a lot of things that really makes life meaningful, which like, what should I be doing? Who are the people I should be around? And are these good or bad environments for me? There is no higher, currency or ground truth. So these are places where having that context of wanting to listen to your intuition is probably going to be a lot better than being the kind of person who distrusts those signals. And we can see clear correlates with broader mental health with people who really value what we call like interoceptive awareness, that felt sense of the body, compared to people who mistrust or just ignore those kind of signals.
What exactly is interoception?
Yeah, there's lots of virtual ink written on it, but the quick definition is it's just the representation of the body's internal state. So how we carry information from our bodies to our minds, and some of that's conscious. A lot of it's unconscious for good reason. You don't want to be titrating your heart rate every second, be very distracting. So a lot of it actually we learn to suppress and it becomes automatic, right? Part of that default process. So interoception can be any sort of information that tells us about what's going on inside of our body. And then interoceptive awareness is the extent to which some of that information breaks through into consciousness and influences our feelings, our perceptions, and our actions.
So if we aren't being aware of that, or if we either on an unconscious state or either consciously we're trying to block and avoid those emotions, how does that change our experience from something that we feel naturally versus something that we're starting to try to manipulate and control and, start thinking more about and analyzing?
Um, well, again, I don't want to come off as saying like we don't want to eventually analyze and make judgments conceptually, but a lot of times we are always just trying to, our brain's trying to predict, what to do based on what it's already seen, right? And so it's trying to sort of pattern match. Okay, in this situation, I think so. See someone's being aggressive to me. This is how I respond. Either attack or withdraw. A lot of times or freeze, right? You get into this kind of these sort of a million responses. Um, and so at that point, as soon as we get into a point of like predicting like what's happening and what should I do about it, we're not really taking in information anymore. And often our feeling states act as cues that there's an urgency to know how to respond. So it's even more likely in higher stress, like high emotion situations, that we're going to feel like, no, I really need to make an action right away. And to the extent that we're really properly modeling the situation and have a good set of responses, that's fine. Um, I think where interoception is really critical is when we know that we either have no idea what to do, or what happens more often actually is we do have a set of behaviors, responses that are just in our toolbox, and we just keep enacting them and they're not getting us what we want. That's a sign that the way we're kind of conditioned to respond to a brief moment of interoceptive awareness, like a feeling state inside, actually isn't adaptive. It's not a good fit for the situation. And trying to figure out, well, I should do this differently than I did before is sort of, you can say that to yourself, but where is that choice going to kind of come from? You're just going to feel the thing and then do the thing. The first, you're feeling tired and the person bothers you, so you're irritable and you snap at them, right? You hope for recognition and you don't get it from someone, so you avoid, you withdraw. Like whatever it is, we all have our patterns of things to do. And so what interoceptive awareness does, in much the same way I was talking about the self earlier, is you say, well, okay, I have this initial feeling state that prompts an action, but what else is going on? Is that really all there is to the story? Have I sort of jumped to deciding I needed to know what to do too soon? Or are things more nuanced, right? Are there more options here? And the way that we change our sense of what's needed is really to take in more information that gives us more things to respond to, right? If we take in enough information about like, well, I feel, hurt, but also confused, but also still, wistful, or there's still some positive, connection here. Like these are all different things that can happen in the complexity of a relationship. You have a lot of choices to, okay, so what element do I want to attend to? So like, to make it more concrete, let's say you have a persistent set of conflicts with a family member, and you think, oh, every time I talk to this person, always goes this way. They say something, I get triggered. I say something, we both leave hurt, right? And like this isn't working for me, right? And then you go on the internet, they're all like, go no contact, right? And you're like, okay, great. So you burn all your bridges, now you're alone. So like, okay, you're like, okay, so maybe the internet advice isn't like it's easy for them to say, but I don't want to just like leave every time there's conflict, but I always have conflict with this person and what's happening. Interoceptive awareness would be, well, can I stay with the complexity of all the different things I feel when I'm in communication with this person? Oh, there they go. They say the critical thing again. And here I go. I feel anger and resentment. And I also feel like hurt. And I also feel longing, like to maybe have that connection. And part of me, like there's still some warmth there, like where I remember what it's like when we do get along. And it's all there, and it's rising and it's bubbling up, and these feelings are chaotic and it's messy and it's a lot of work. Like you have to be kind of like courageous to be like, I'm going to sit with this, as opposed to just like trying to protect myself with what I already know, because the pattern you have leaves you both upset. You think, well, okay, going into like anger gets me, I know what that gets me. I haven't actually tried to like go into connection. It's what I want, but the dominant thing to do is to I know the anger will protect me. What if I stayed with the connection, stayed vulnerable? What would happen? Because the same thing's probably happening for the other person, right? And so if you really want to break cycles, to do it just from like from the outside in, and say like just act a different way, it's good in theory. It doesn't really work in practice. In practice, you have to really feel something that motivates you to act differently. So being able to say like, yeah, I'm feeling a bit upset right now, and I want us to be closer than we've been, is a weird thing to say when you're starting to fight with someone. But it's so much less likely that they're going to keep being aggressive when you say something like that than when you're like, well, you did this, or like, screw you, or whatever it normally is. And it comes from this awareness that there's more than the initial reaction. So sort of
Mm.
get to, as I know I'm a bit long-winded with my answer, but it can't be conceptual. You have to really feel like there's more to our relationship than this stereotyped, like, habitual way that we deal with each other. And again, there's nothing wrong with that if it's working, or it's a surface level kind of relationship. That's all you want. But for the important relationships in our lives, we need to be able to go deeper, to get past all the protective, layers, to the things that really matter to us, which are very often like connection, recognition, acceptance, having someone you can be vulnerable with. And you need to be able to feel that directly, to behave differently. You need to take in a different type of input to produce a different output. So the awareness is sort of like this kind of, sometimes it seems purposeless. It's often very chaotic. It can be even more upsetting because you're coming into contact with all the stuff that's happening. And again, there's this freedom there, because now you can say, oh, but there's the thing that I've been missing. It's still there. If I can tune into that, a lot of this other stuff, I don't need to respond to it. I've just got used to responding to the most negative parts of my experience.
Mm.
And if I stop being the person so tuned to that type of response, I don't know what would happen. Right? So it's not guaranteed to get better, but you do know what's going to happen if you keep responding in the way that isn't working. So it's just an approach where you really try to come from your own internal experience to find where the value is, the thing that you care about, and then let your intuition guide you, as opposed to your intuition when the thing that it's responding to is like threat, because then most of us aren't going to act in ways that are going to bring us closer together, or be constructive.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. It's almost like a trickling effect where it's like if you can facilitate new sensations, then the new sensations could potentially facilitate new thoughts and then facilitate new actions and then facilitate new interactions with that other person.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's just trying on the idea that even if you don't think it's 100% one way versus another, but sometimes like what's happening in our bodies and our feeling precedes what happens in our minds. And yeah, there's a back and forth, but always trying to make the mind have to just control and decide what's going to happen next. If it was that easy, like, we wouldn't get stuck in these kind of like these ruts, these cycles. It's the theory is there's almost always some sort of feeling state that we're used to tuning into and responding to the exclusion of all the other things that are available. And there's so much available, like an overwhelming amount. So there's a skillfulness in learning like how much to open and to titrate and figure out what you want to really look for. That's why having some of that intention ahead of time is also really useful. So you don't just get like washed and overwhelmed and can't respond at all, which also isn't that great. And it can happen too, right? We're human, that's life.